Everyone, and welcome to this week's Learning Webinar. My name is Chantel, and I'm going to be your host today as we discuss importing and exporting from the software. We'll look at all different ways of bringing information into your models and also sending it out as well. Following the presentation, we're going to open up the chat panel where you can type in any questions you have about importing and exporting, and I can answer them at that time. So if a question comes up during the presentation, don't hesitate to go up there, type in your question, and I can deal with it during the question and answer period. Following the entire presentation, I'll email you out a booklet about importing and exporting so you can read about everything we covered as well and have step-by-step instructions to follow too. So let's get started and discussing importing and exporting. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the File pull-down menu, and under the File pull-down menu, I'm going to choose Import. And there's a number of different things that you can import depending on the version of Envisioneer that you have. So if you have Envisioneer Pro Architect, you will not see the import PDF file there. That is restricted to Building Essentials and Construction Suite. So I'm going to start off by importing a PDF file, but if you do have Pro Architect, just know that that's not a feature that you have in your software. So I'm going to choose Import a PDF file. And then I'm going to grab a PDF from my desktop that I had saved there, and I simply choose Open. Now, when PDFs are created, a PDF file can be created in two different manners. One, it could be created in a CAD program like Envisioneer, and when it does that, it's a vector PDF, meaning that all of the lines see themselves as a line and corners as corners, so I can actually pick on them and snap to those points. The other way of creating a PDF file is that you could scan in a hand-drawn image, and then those would never be a vector. I wouldn't be able to recognize those as lines in any way. Those are just made up of tiny little pixels on the screen. So when we bring a file into Envisioneer originally, it'll always come in assuming that it's that raster image. But if you uncheck it, and it's a vector image, you'll notice that it comes in a lot crisper. You'll be able to see the elements, zoom in on them. The more you zoom in, the better they are, the better they look, and you can snap to the different objects. The reason you might want to bring it in as a vector, if it's available, is for that snapping purpose. But if you're bringing in a PDF for the purpose of tracing over top of it to quickly bring something in, you'll be able to get close with a raster image. You won't be able to snap, obviously, because it's a raster and it's pixels, but you will be able to get close to the edges of everything, so you can bring it in and still have that flexibility. When you bring in a PDF, like the one on my screen, you can see that it's orientated so that it is going up and down my screen. I want to flip it and rotate it so that the bottom edge here along the drawing sheet is on the bottom edge of my screen. So I'm going to come over here to angle, and I'm going to rotate it to a 270-degree angle. If you don't know the angle, then you can always use this pick the angle. So say you've been brought a PDF and it's on a really obscure angle. Maybe it is one that they did trace over top of, and it was a raster image, and they scanned it. You can always pick the angle as well to kind of straighten that out too. The next thing you want to check is the scale. When it brings it in, it's going to try to scale the object for you based on maybe what the title block scale is. But as you're aware, every single drawing that's part of that title block could be a separate scale. So if I'm looking at the one I'm bringing in, that floor plan could be a 1/4 inch, the elevations might be an 1/8 inch, this roof plan maybe is a 1/2 inch, we really don't know. And we don't want to bring it in at the wrong scale. So I'm going to zoom in on my floor plan to a known dimension. So using the tools at the bottom of the screen, I used the zoom window tool. Now when I've got the scale, the little button beside the scale is called Pick the Scale. And think of this as calibrating the PDF. I'm going to pick 2 points and tell it what the distance is between those points, so it will force the scale to match it. So I pick on that button, and then I move my cursor onto the screen, and see how my cursor is snapping to those corners because this is a vector PDF. So I left click there, bring it over to the other intersection of that dimension line and I left click again, it shows me what it sees as a distance. I'm going to type in 12 feet. That's the distance that I want it to read, and I want it to scale the PDF accordingly. If it's anything but a 1/4 inch equals a foot, I'll see this 48 change. A 48 scale is a 1/4 inch scale. If it is a 1/4 inch scale, that 48 will remain the same. So when I click OK, it stays at 48, so I know it is my 1/4 inch scale. If you find that you're bringing in a raster image again and it's been scanned, and you can see that it's kind of skewed, that it's been stretched in one direction, you can scale in the X and the Y. You'll notice that the two of them are locked together, so when I scale the X, it'll also scale the Y at the same time. But if you do find that skewing happening, you can uncheck here, unlock it, and then scale to the X and scale to the Y separately so that it comes in at the correct scale and everything kind of reformats itself to the right scale and the right orientation for you. When you're bringing in a PDF, you may not want to bring in the entire PDF. You might just want to bring in a single portion of it and leave all of the other portions beyond. What I'm going to do for our example is I'm going to bring in just the ground floor plan. I don't need the title block or the elevations or the roof plan for the work I'm going to be doing. It's just extra lines being brought into my model that will increase the file size, so I don't want to bring them in. So I'm going to hit Set here on Crop Box, and this allows me to left click, and when I left click, a box is going to start coming off of my cursor, and then I just left click again to form that box. What's inside the crop box will be brought out to my Envisioneer model. What is outside of that box is going to be left behind and not brought in with me. The next thing that you can do when you're bringing in a PDF is you can dim it down. Now I'm bringing this PDF into my model space because I'm going to want to trace over top of it to start my model from it. So I might want to dim it down so that it's kind of lighter than what my model is going to be. So when I do trace over top of the walls, it'll be very apparent which walls I've traced over top of and which ones I still need to do. If I was bringing in this PDF to my working drawing space, which we'll do later, then I might want to keep it fully, not dimmed at all, keep it just as bright and as intense as it was originally drawn, because it's going to be actually a detail or something I want on my working drawing sheets. When I bring it into my model space, I'm just using it to trace over top of it, so I don't want to have that. From there, with the scale done, the angle rotated, the crop box set, dimming done, all that's left is to insert it. So down in the lower right-hand corner of my screen, you'll see the Insert button. I just pick it, and a copy of the floor plan attaches to my cursor, and I insert it. So that's importing a PDF. And basically, you'd want to do that so that you could quickly trace over top of something, usually predominantly used for estimating purposes. Someone else has done your plan work. Now you have to do an estimate for it. So I'm just going to quickly grab some walls here, and I'll just quickly trace over top of it, and you can see how it's trying to snap to those corners for me, and I'll just pick to my original start point and say that I traced around the edges, and there's the walls around the four sides there. So that's bringing in that PDF. You can then, through this view filter down at the bottom, if you no longer want to see it, that will be under the Notation tab, and you'll see Imported Drafting, which I can turn off. And now I don't see the PDF anymore. I can turn it back on if I need it, but now I'm just left with the walls that I traced over top of with. Let's go back up to the File pull-down menu, go to Import. Next, underneath that, you'll see Import a CAD file. Importing a CAD file is the exact same process as importing a PDF file. You'll have the same dialog box, the same questions to ask. It'll bring in a 2D CAD file, AutoCAD DWG or DXF. Again, with the sole purpose of bringing it in the model spaces, you're really going to want to trace over top of it. Perhaps you want to get an estimate from that original drawing file that was sent you from whoever. So again, the same process, importing a PDF, importing a CAD file. The other one we have is Project Trace Image. This again is the same process and thought as importing a PDF and a CAD file, but this will bring in a JPEG. And you're bringing in that JPEG or Targa file because, again, you need to start off your drawing based on something, and somebody scanned it in and saved it as a JPEG and not a PDF. So same process as the top three, same outcome that you would want. You're just really bringing it in so you can trace over top of it. Other than that, underneath that, we have Photo Board Wizard. And the Photo Board Wizard will bring in an actual picture that you can see in your 3D model. So here's a good example. We've got Charlie the dog here. Maybe it's the family dog of the homeowners that you're working for currently. You want to personalize that model for them, bring in a picture of the dog to do so. When we bring in a photo board, you're going to want to, first of all, give it a name. So I can give this one called, we'll bring in Charlie. So I will go out and find Charlie. And then you hit that select button. And when you hit the select button, it's bringing you out to your hard drive for you to find the file that you want to bring in. And this could be image files such as JPEGs, bitmaps that you want to bring in. So you can bring all of those in. So I'm going to bring in an image here. So here's the file types, bitmap, GIF, JPEG, PNGs, and TIFFs. I'm going to look through, and I believe Charlie is a bitmap, but we'll go through and see if we can find him here. There's Charlie the dog. And I'll bring it open. So I've got Charlie, and here's where you can change the size. So depending on the picture you took, Charlie's going to be a big dog. He's 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide. But you can change that to be any size. So if the picture, again, is out of size, you can make the adjustment of width and height here. Now, you'll notice Charlie had a magenta background. That means that it is going to be transparent when we bring it in. And bring in next. When I bring in Charlie the dog, he can be brought in 2 different formats, stationary and billboard. Stationary means wherever I place the picture of Charlie the dog, if I'm looking directly at him, that's when I'll see Charlie the dog. But if I change my camera angle, I can no longer see Charlie the dog. He's just meant to be viewed from one angle. If I make Charlie a billboard, that means Charlie's always going to look at me like a good dog as I move around. So I'll always get a visual of that billboard. So it's good for people and dogs, which you might want stationary or maybe a background image that you're bringing in or a particular object up against a wall that you want to see from a certain angle. Then I hit next and finish, and you can see Charlie the dog. It's just a billboard, but I'm going to place him right out front of my house. Now, it is an automatic return, so you'll notice that as soon as I inserted Charlie the dog, the billboard, another Charlie the dog billboard attached itself to my cursor. So I have to tell it by right-clicking and hitting finished that I only want one Charlie the dog. But if I wanted multiple, it's there. I'm ready to insert. So if I look out in 3D and walk out here a little bit, I should be able to see there's Charlie the dog. And he's always looking at me and changing his position there. So you've always got Charlie here, and as I rotate, and I know over the internet that might be slow, but Charlie's always going to rotate and look at me for us. Okay, put that back into 2D. So that's file, import, and bringing in a photo board. The other object types that you can bring in are actual 3D objects. And when we bring the 3D object, it can be a SketchUp file, it can be an AutoCAD file, it can be a 3D Studio file, or a DXF file. And these are, again, 3D objects. So we can bring in the DWG files in 2 different formats, a flat 2D CAD file in DWG or DXF, meant to trace over, or an actual 3D object that we want to use in our model. So I'm going to use the Object Wizard. And I'm going to tell it that I'm going to bring in some interior furniture, and I'm going to bring in a table. Again, now all I have to do is hit on that select button, and when I hit on the select button, it'll take me out to my hard drive where I will find my blocks for importing, and I will bring in this coffee table and click open. And when I do that, you can see I get a little visual of what that coffee table is going to look at. I brought that in a SketchUp format, but again, you can bring in DWGs, 3DSs, and DXF as well. When we're bringing in an object, depending on how it was originally modeled in the alternative software, it could be orientated incorrectly. So that's why we have these little arrows here. So if the original orientation was like that, you know you want the table legs on the floor, you can just keep hitting these arrows to keep rotating it so it has the correct orientation for you. Then I simply hit next. When you're bringing in an object, usually in another software product, they're going to be done on different layers. So if you'd want to turn off some layers and not even bring them in, this gives you the opportunity to turn their visibility off. So you might not want to see certain things, turn them on and off here. When I hit next, now it wants to see the visibility of this object in 2D. So in 2D, I have to tell it what I want to see as far as the line works for 2D. Do I want just an outline of the coffee table, or is there some special view that I want? I'm going to take advantage of the tool down here in the lower right-hand corner of this dialog box called Slice. When I choose Slice, you can see that I get this little bar up the side, and as I move it up, watch the little outline here. This is going to be the 2D outline that I'm going to use when I look at this block in 2D in my plan view. So when I get it to a position that I like, perhaps the full outline here just showing the rectangular outline of the table, then I hit this green plus sign. When I hit this green plus sign, you'll notice that this slice gets added to the visibility in plan view, and the eye is open. Whereas all of those other edges and layers that we saw in 3D are shut down, so it's a cleaner looking view. Once I have that slice in my 2D plan view determined, I can click next. And then all I have to do is hit finish, and a copy of that table attaches itself to my cursor, and it's now part of my drawing. And again, you can see that my cursor is reloaded with the table. It's automatically going to want to feed another one to me just in case I want multiples, but I can right click and tell it that I'm finished. I only wanted one table. That's bringing in, importing an object, and again, that was a SketchUp file that we brought in. Another option that we have is 2020 Design Import. This, again, is going to be an option that you'll be able to see if you have Building Essentials or above. If you're using ProArchitect, you will not see 2020 Design Import. It's a feature that's left for the other versions of our software. If you've created a kitchen design in 2020, they have an export feature that you can export it into the Envisioneer XML format. So when I pick on 2020 Design Import, it'll take me out to my desktop here where I'm going to find a 2020 file. So I've created one previously that I'm going to bring in. Okay, so then I simply hit Open. And what it's doing now is it's looking at all of the 2020 objects that were part of that XML file that I originally created in 2020. And when I bring it into Envisioneer, I have 3 different options on how I'm going to bring it in. The first one is called Automatic Placement. What we'll cover when we start looking at exports is I can export this entire model that I've created in Envisioneer out to 2020. And then I could open that in 2020, add my cabinets, and then export it back out to bring it into Envisioneer. When I do that, Envisioneer will recognize and allow you to automatically place it where this original block was created. So it will recognize the walls that I sent out, and when I bring them back in, it will match it up and line them up so that the cabinets line up with the walls that I sent out. If it is, like in my case, a custom placement, because this model doesn't match the original kitchen and walls that I sent over to 2020. So I'm just going to have to show it manually where I want these cabinets to be placed. The last option there is cancel. Oops, I opened up the wrong file. This doesn't belong to that 2020 file that I originally exported out. I'm going to cancel and open up that other file. So automatic placement recognizes the walls that you exported out originally to 2020, and it'll match them up. Custom placement allows you to place the 2020 cabinets and objects into the room because it wasn't originally created in this file, which is my case. So I'm going to hit continue, and then you can see the 2020 objects attach itself to my cursor, and I'm just going to move them into the kitchen here. So when I do, they'll all be now individual blocks. So if I place a camera inside this room that doesn't have a ceiling, but we'll get the feel for it, there's the kitchen that was designed in 2020 and that I brought in. So it brought in all of the cabinets for me, all of the appliances for me, and they're all individual elements that it's brought in for me. So you can have that flexibility by bringing in 2020 designs if you're using our building essentials and above. Back to file, back to import. Underneath that, you'll see BIM to catalog and BIM to project. When we have our catalog here, like I have on the right side of my screen, sometimes you'll create new objects and think, wow, that's a great object, like that coffee table that I just created. You might want to share that with other people that are also using your software, and you can share it with them. So maybe you have other people in your office, or you have other design people that you know that are also using it, and say, hey, do you want to use this one? I'll BIM it out of my catalog and allow you to absorb it into your catalog. First, let me show you how to add this coffee table to my catalog, and then I'll show you how to export it out as a BIM file, and then I'll show you how to import it back in. To add this table, we added it to the single drawing. So it's only a function of this particular drawing. It's not in my catalog, because when you go to File and Import and bring in an object, you're just bringing it into this particular drawing. If I want to save that to my catalog so I can use it for all my future projects, I go up to Catalogs and I choose Save Element to Catalog. When I do that, look at my cursor. It's showing you an arrow pointing to a hard drive. So I'm going to click on my table, and it says, would you like to save the table to the catalog? And I'll say yes. Would I like to save another element? Maybe there was multiple elements that I brought in and that I'd like to save to my catalog, and I could say yes if I did, or no if I don't. And now what it's doing is it's updating my catalog. When I brought in that table, I told it that it was interior, very bottom of my interior furniture, a new folder, and it's placing that table in that folder for me. So there I can see table. Now I want to share that with my friends and send that out, or my colleagues in the office, because it's a great table. Maybe they want to use it. So I'll go up to File, choose Export, and I'll say Catalog to BIM. I'm saving something from my catalog to a BIM file to share with someone else. That'll bring up this dialog box. On the left-hand side is my catalog. What I have to do is I have to transfer over to the right-hand side, this BIM file, all the objects that I want to BIM out to share to someone. So in here, I'm going to click on the plus side beside my elements, scroll down till I see my interior furniture, and then scroll down until I see my table. When I have my table, I can transfer that over. And now in my BIM file, I'll notice interior furniture table. When they BIM it into their catalog, it'll be part of that same folder. It'll create that root node folder and bring over the table. So if you wanted to put it in a very particular folder, I suggest you move it in your catalog first before you export it, and it'll send it over in that same folder that it's residing in. When you're creating a BIM file, you can transfer over individual objects like I did with the table, or you can send over an entire category. So if I wanted the appliances, all of them to go over, I could highlight appliances and then hit transfer, and all of them would be sent to my BIM file to share. I could also create and grab all of my elements. So not just my appliances, but appliances, cabinets, ceilings, columns, I could bring it all over. That would be a huge BIM file. Wouldn't recommend that. It's easier just to share your entire catalog file instead of exporting all of them out. You'd really use a BIM file when you're wanting to share one or a couple different objects, not your entire catalog. So now that I have this table sent over here and it was transferred successfully, all I have to do is click OK. Now it wants to know, where do I want to save this BIM file? So I'm going to tell it I want to save it right out on my desktop, and I'm going to call it table. And then I hit save. It saves it, and now there's a BIM file created of that table. I would email that BIM file that's saved out now on my desktop to someone else. And when they receive it, they'll come up here to File, Import, and they're going to BIM to Catalog. Now they're looking for a BIM file. So I'm going to look out on my desktop and find the table file. Click Open. Now on the right-hand side, I'll have my table BIM. And now it's an opposite transfer. You can see that the arrow is going in the opposite direction. I'm going to find under Interior Furniture the table and hit Transfer. I want you to look down here at the bottom of this dialog box at Status when I do that. It's telling me it's ready to transfer table. When I do that, it's scanning for duplicates to see if I already have something under the root node called table. If I do, it's going to say, well, that's a duplicate. You can't bring that in because something's already residing there with that name. So it doesn't overwrite in the catalog something that's already there. If I want to bring it over and I know that who I'm sharing it with already has something named table, I'd have to give it a unique name. Otherwise, it would transfer it over. I would look in my Elements folder under Interior Furniture, and we'll pretend that I didn't have it before. And look, there's root node, there's table, I have it. Now we both have that same block and all those different items that I transferred over. All I have to do is click OK, and it saves my catalog, and I can see that I do now have the table. That's bringing in BIM files. Really handy way to share files with other people. In our newsletter that we create every month, we include a BIM file. So now you'll be able to get those BIM files and import them into your catalog as well. So that was going over all of the import options that we have here in Model Space, bringing in a PDF, a CAD file, or a project trace image. Those will all be 2D plans that you're bringing in with the likelihood that you're wanting to trace over top of it, probably for estimating purposes. Photo boards are just a 2D image, but it's elevated up into a 3D view so that you can bring in pictures to personalize the drawing that you're creating. Objects Wizard brings in 3D objects. 2020 brings in a 2020 file. And BIM files we just covered brings in items from your catalog that you can share to other people. Now, as far as export capabilities, when we're exporting, we can export it in many different formats. What's on your screen could be, and in your drawing space area, could be exported out as a 2D image. That'll create it as a JPEG or a bitmap. So if you wanted to share a snapshot of what's on your screen, use the 2D image tool. If you want to send it out as a drawing file, a DWG or a DXF file, you could export what's in here in your drawing space as a DWG or a DXF file. If you needed to share the model, the 3D model, with somebody but flattened down as a 2D image. So it looks at this 2D image and sends it out as just a 2D view of that file in AutoCAD format. Or you can send out the entire 3D model. If you want to share that 3D model and have them open that up in AutoCAD or SketchUp format, we can send out the 3D model, and they can open it up in those different formats. When you're creating the 3D model export, I'll just process, it's going to want it to have a name. So again, I'll put this under my desktop, and here's all of the different DWG, DXF, 3D Studio, Vermal, Atlantis, Lightscape, SketchUp, and IFC format. The ones that you see here, Vermal, Atlantis, Lightscape, these are ones that you're going to want to probably do some further rendering with, Atlantis and Lightscape. SketchUp, if you're familiar with SketchUp, is a 3D modeling tool. Perhaps you want to bring it out there if you're doing a project and working with someone that's working in SketchUp. An IFC file is an international file format that allows all different software companies to kind of talk to each other in a universal format. So that's an IFC file that you could bring it out in as well. So if I tell it that I want it to go out in an AutoCAD file format, and I could call it test, this will create on my desktop a 3D model view of the drawing, and I'm going to hit save. And that all gets sent out as a 3D model that you could open up later in AutoCAD. Export successful. Okay, you carry on with your work. File, export, catalog to BIM, which we went over, and to project. When you're exporting it out and you have elements that are part of your project, your drawing file that you're currently working on, but you haven't saved to the catalog, you can save those elements that reside in this model out to a BIM file to share with someone. That's the difference between catalog to BIM and project to BIM. All of the other items that you see under there, Weyerhaeuser, CSD, MyTech, Boise, Keymark, and Simpson, these are only file formats that you'll see if you have our construction suite software. These are all advanced exports that you would have if you wanted to do kind of a structural analysis of the software. Weyerhaeuser Javelin in this BIM XML format will take all of our walls and our ceilings and our roof structures so they can do the floor joists, and they'll engineer them from our file format in Weyerhaeuser Javelin. CSD does the exact same thing, going out in that BIM XML format as well. And it will also do a structural analysis of the building to put in things like your joist as well. MyTech will look at the file format, and again, it'll look for roof trusses that it's going to be able to structurally create in MyTech Sapphire. There's also Boise BC Framer. So if you're using any Boise products, you can export the model out in Boise format so that, again, they can do the structural analysis and recommend their products. Same with Keymark and Simpson as well. Underneath that, you'll see 2020 design. If you have building essentials or construction suite, you'll see this in your export menu. And this will take the walls, doors, and windows of your file and send them over to 2020 so that they can design the kitchen within that design that you've created. This saves your designer in 2020 time so they don't have to redesign those walls, doors, and windows, and it also alleviates any errors. So if they put a door or a window in the wrong spot, they can't if you've just exported that same file format from them. The other option that we have is Sketchfab. When you send something out to Sketchfab, Sketchfab is a website that allows you to upload 3D models so that you can view them. Great little site so that if you have a client that you want to share a file with, export it out in SketchUp format. And when you have that Sketchfab export, it loads it up onto the website at sketchfab.com, and you can send a link to a client so they can walk through the building that you've created for them, and they can leave little notes behind with that as well. So it's a great little export feature when you want to share your 3D model. I'm going to flip now onto one of the working drawing sheets. We've been working exclusively with importing and exporting within the model space, but now we can also import and export differently when we're here on our working drawing space. So for here, when I go to File and Import, you can see the list gets shorter. When I'm on my working drawing space, I'm only working in a strictly 2D environment, so I can bring in my PDF, my CAD files, or an image file. So if I had a picture that I wanted to add in to my working drawings, I could bring it in as an image file, JPEG, bitmap, or if it's a CAD file, a CAD detail, I could say import a CAD file, and it will look out onto the hard drive where I can have details, and the details I'm looking at right now are included with your Envisioneer software. So I can say, I need this beam pocket detail. Click open. It shows me a little detail. You can see the concrete, the cutout there for the beam pocket, the sill plate going over top of it, all of the text, everything there. And again, you'll recognize this dialog box. It looks just like the import a PDF file that we looked at before. This is bringing in the DWG file. Same dialog box, same objects, options, other than down at the bottom here, there's no conversion from raster to vector because a DWG file is always a vector. And you can scale it, so I could say scale that up by 2 and insert it onto my drawing sheet, and there is a DWG file, 2D, brought into my drawing sheet. When I bring it in and I left click on it, you'll see that it's all one block, it's all attached together. But when I select it and it turns green, all attached, look over to the right-hand side of my screen, you'll see my object properties. There you can see that I can edit the definition of this block. So when I edit the definition of this block, that means they're all individual items. So when I hit on the text, it recognizes that it's text. Now my object properties read that that's red text, and the content say beam as required. And if I click on a line, it'll tell me the layer, color, line type, line weight. So I can edit those DWG files, change them, add things to them, and once I'm done with my editing, I just hit the escape key on my keyboard. When I hit the escape key on the keyboard, it locks them all and attaches them all back together. So always remember to hit escape if you go in and edit a DWG file that you have imported. Bringing in the image file and the PDF file, again, are the same process. The only other way of kind of exporting the file is by printing it. So when I hit File and Print here, I'm taking a view of my model that I'm going to send out, either to a local printer or as a PDF file. To be able to print a PDF in our print dialog box, you have to have a print PDF writer on your computer. That PDF writer will allow it to create the PDF. So when I do this PDF right now, I'll accept all of the options that it has here, and then I just hit print. When I hit print, it will save a copy of that drawing out onto any place that I want it to. So I'm just going to save it out onto my desktop here, and I'll call it project2.pdf and hit save. It saves it. My PDF writer that I have is called Desk PDF, and it'll bring up a copy of me for me to review instantly on my screen. So there's my PDF that I wrote using our writer, like an export. What I'd like to do now is review any questions that you might have about all of the various import and export tools that we covered during today's webinar. So in the GoToMeeting console that's on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll notice the questions and chat area. You can type in any questions that you might have, and I'll be able to answer them for you. Let's get to the questions. So I'm just going to zip over to here to the questions. Can one import an AutoCAD PDF file? If it's a PDF, then it doesn't matter where it was originated, it's a PDF file. So you would import a PDF. And it doesn't matter where it originated again, if it was a scanned image that they saved as a PDF, if it started out in AutoCAD and brought in as a PDF is a PDF, and you would use the import PDF file tool. What is the process to import a SketchUp 2D picture into a catalog? If it's a picture that you're bringing in, the picture itself would have to come in from the photo board wizard. If it's a 2D picture, that's the only way that we bring in those 2D pictures. So you either bring it in as a SketchUp 3D block, and when you bring in a SketchUp 3D block, that's an object wizard. But if you're bringing it in as a picture, then you have to bring it in using our photo board wizard tool, because it will be saved as a JPEG or a bitmap image. Can one export a single window element to SketchUp without putting it in an assembly? So if I just wanted to bring one thing out to SketchUp, how do I get that one thing sent out? I don't want to bring out my entire model here. I just want to send one thing out to SketchUp. Well, what I would do is a file, save as. And when I save it as, I'll call it test. So now this copy of my file is called test. It's not my original file. I saved as. And what I would do is I would delete out everything in my model except for that one thing that I'm going to be exporting out. So maybe it's that table that I want. Now it's the only thing in my model. So when I hit File, Export, the 3D model, that's the only thing there. It's the only thing that it's going to export. Otherwise, it's going to grab everything and send it all out the door for you. I need to send a floor plan out to a customer for approval. He doesn't have AutoCAD or anything. What would be the best way to do that? If it's the floor plan that he's going to be approving, I would get him to, I would save it as a PDF file and get him to review your PDF. If it's just a 2D floor plan, file and print it and use a PDF writer to print it out so that he can open it up a PDF. Because a PDF writer, reader, it's very accessible. He can download a reader if he doesn't have one and be able to view your PDF. If you want him to view the entire 3D model and kind of do a walkthrough, then I would export it out in that Sketchfab, format and have a Sketchfab account set up so that he can walk through and see the entire model. If you delete a wall, how would you keep the window? You can't. Okay, so if it's a window that you want to keep, it has to go out with a single wall. You could truncate the wall so that it's just a piece around that window, and then once you get it into SketchUp, it's easy just to take out those wall pieces instead of the whole model. So if it's something like a window or door that has to reside in and is a function of a wall, the wall has to go with them. Okay, that seems to be all of the questions that are up there so far. So I'm going to keep that chat panel open for another moment. So if anyone's asking a question or typing one up now, you've got the opportunity to do so. But again, following our presentation today, I'll be sending you out a booklet so you can read about all of the import and export options that you have in the software so that you can review them. And we'll also send you a link to today's class. We tape them all as well. Next question. Will there ever be a time when I can import an object into a specific low-level group, i.e. in your catalog, rather than interior furniture? No. The reason I'm saying that, so the question was when I bring in, like I brought in today, and I told it when I was bringing in the table today that it was interior furniture. So it knew to classify it as interior furniture and it put it in within that group. But then when it's going to put it in, it doesn't know where you want to put it as a subfolder. So it's going to create a new subfolder at the bottom for imports. Otherwise, the reason it does that is, say you've had a lot of catalog work and you have thousands of objects and you bring in table and it just puts it into a folder, that would make it hard for you to find in the future. So we bring it into a simple folder so that you can see all of your imports and then allow you to move it later. And moving it, if I came here to File, Catalogs, Element Manager, it's very simple to move them later. If I came to Interior Furniture, let's close out some of these groups that I have open here so I can find it quickly. I went to Interior Furniture. I see my table is here. I want my table to be part of my living room furniture and put it under tables. If I grab that table, I'm just going to close out some of these other groups. So it's easy to hold down my left mouse button and drag it and place it into the table group. So you can do that. So now my table is part of my tables. The reason, again, that we do that is it's so that it's not confusing of where it's actually going to put it. It doesn't understand your catalog structure. It doesn't want to guess what folder you want it to put in. So it brings in the folder that it creates on import so that you can move it later. Where did you classify the table as interior furniture? Well, when I was coming up here to File and Import, and in the object wizard, it's right here. This drop-down list right here is where you classify what you want it to be. And I told it that I wanted it to be interior furniture. So if you're bringing something in, this is where it gets the opportunity to create it as that type of object. Interior lighting, so it gets the interior lighting fields with it, or furniture, so it gets the furniture fields with it. Cancel out of that. Can't they add the low-level groups to the import object dialog? Again, they could, absolutely, when they're bringing it in here. And I said I want to bring in an object, and part of here could be picking the folders. But think of all of our clients that have hundreds of folders to bring in. There are lots of clients that we have that organize all of their different items in multiple folders. So this would become a really giant dialog box like our catalog element manager dialog box. It almost would be, it'd be too large to bring them all in. You got to think of people with lots and lots of file folders. So you can't, if you wanted to show them all, it would become a bigger dialog box, and I think it would be a bigger animal than just bringing it in one single folder and then moving it afterwards. That is all the questions answered so far. So again, I'm going to hold the webinar open for one further moment, and then if there is any further questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, we'll end off the webinar. I'll send you out your link to the recording. Give it 24 hours to update this one so I can get it uploaded properly. And then from there, we'll also, in the email that I'm sending you, have that booklet that you can read. Okay, that looks like it's all of the questions for today. Again, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their day to join us for the live class. I hope you enjoy them every week, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's class. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.